Alright, so two huge games on this weekend, lads. We know the Ulster Final and the Leinster Final. A little bit of news to get through first. I'm going to start with you, Brennan. This is the Ulster Final and the capacity is 18,000. And I remember talking on Monday's show about, Jesus, imagine Mayo and Galway not selling out in Croke Park. This is crazy stuff. Mayo have fanatical fans. And then I was reading the Irish News and the Ulster GA PRO, Declan Woods, was quoted as saying, the capacity is 18,000, but the caveat is that it is dependent on all tickets being sold in blocks of 5, and then people can be seated in various groups of 5 around the ground. We all know that won't happen. Some people will buy in 2s and 3s, so ultimately we'll have around 14,500 people, give or take. I couldn't get my head around this. I nearly fell off the chair. So, this is the most brain-dead shite I've ever come across. So you're talking about 18,000 spread around Croke Park. You barely even see it. Are you not telling me this is 50,000 that it'd be a tougher job? 18,000 is lost in Croke Park, and they're making sure that it has to be pods of 5. So, for example, if you and the missus bought 2 tickets and nobody else that you know is coming in on buying any tickets, the 3 tickets that are in your pod is completely wasted. I have never heard the like. Now, I'm not blaming the GA on this. I believe this has been forced on them, but have you ever heard the likes of this?
I don't understand why they can't just space out what's there.
Yeah.
Listen, I can see Croke Park's point of view in this in terms of they don't want to open up all the stands because they're going to have people everywhere all the way up. They're going to have ushers, stewards and all that. So they want just the people to be in a couple of the stands, which cuts down the amount of people there. But surely even in them stands, as long as people are a couple of seats from each other, we're then reason to be outside and enjoy the game. So in terms of people missing out on that, as you said, if those blocks, pods all sell out, and then you have real fans that want to go, even though there's seats there for them, they now can't go. So yeah, it's a bit sad, bit of a disaster. Well, so that's all we seem to be getting in this country is everything that's not making a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, it is. You could talk all day about this kind of stuff, but we won't. We'll move off it. I couldn't believe it. You think 18,000 and you're complaining that that's not enough. And then you realise that the 18,000 is only a notional number. It's not even what the capacity is going to be like. It's just, it's hard to get your head around, Chair.
No, it is. And all an effort had to do maybe was look across the water and see what they've done in the UK. I know they're a bit more liberal and free in how they opened up, but they still have people back in the stadiums for
60,000 for the final in Wembley.
Yeah, so how did they structure that? But the only thing I can think of is that because of the pods of 5, Nefford might be thinking, well then, if me and you order 2 tickets and then we knock up to Brendan up the road and he brings himself and 2 others with him, at least if there is a COVID passed on to each other, it's still contained in the local community. I don't know.
In the 5, yeah.
In the 5, but it's still a waste, isn't it? It's stupid.
Yeah, no, it is. It doesn't.
So I was at Wembley. I was at the semi-final England and Denmark. So the difference is over there. You see, when you go into their testing centre, they have that test back to you in 45 minutes. You have to show the test before you get into Wembley. So the difference is they have this rapid testing
the
situation where it just goes on your phone and 45 minutes later you've got the result rather than, the way here it's a day to 2 days.
Yeah.
So that's how they really speed up everything and get everybody into Wembley. Listen, even at that, it's not perfect, but they did attempt to do their best around keeping any COVID. They didn't keep all the numpty England fans out, that's the only thing.
They're the antigen tests, obviously. We're not allowed to use them in this country. So, I suppose that's... Listen, I need to stop talking about this. I've given up being being a COVID correspondent. So I'm happily out of not following any of that stuff. Shane Walsh incident, lads. We didn't cover this on Monday. So Porrick Joyce said after the game, he got bumped to the ground, thrown on the ground, and nothing happened. That's 7 or 8 officials there are at the match. I've seen what happened. I'd seen what happened, but obviously they didn't see it. It's frustrating when that happens and they get away with it. Now, I've seen this incident as well, Ger. I'll get your take on it first.
Yeah, I thought Shane Walsh was doing what he should have done, pulling back Lee Keegan then. I thought it was a horror initially. But
I thought it was Lee Keegan.
Yeah, so he pulled him back and Keegan just pulled him back, and there's no way Keegan went to hurt him the way he hurt him. Just the way he fell, it was unlucky, but you can have no complaints really. I think it's part and parcel of it, and I'm sure Shane Walsh has no complaints either about it. It was just very unlucky. He was pulling the man back on to support the play, and the man said, "Here,
you won't be doing that again."
Won't be doing that again. So feck off and stand on his ground. and that's part and parcel of it. It was just unlucky that the way he hit the ground, he obviously caught a weak spot on the shoulder and required a bit of an injection. But did it take him out of the game? Definitely, because he was having a big impact in the first half.
Yeah. No, it definitely did. No intent did it. And Pádraig O'Hora was going down a ball in the second half, and Damien Comer came over and kind of hit him as he was going down, and he got an injury. These things happen, Brendan. Like, I mean, there's no doubt Keegan was saying, "You won't be doing that to me again." He was throwing him to the ground. No one will say he wasn't, but to say that he was dumped or spear tackled, or I don't know.
I think there's just that way you fall. Sometimes the weight of yourself and the man that you're on can just catch and can pop a shoulder, pull a ligament and that. And you're right, there's ways of looking. Well, it happened that fast, and I know there's 8 officials there, but I think anybody watching it there, it looked like it was a bit of grappling. I agree with Jared. I just think it was more accidental.
Yeah.
The trick was to make sure, if you're the aggressor, make sure you fall on the ground too.
And he didn't do that. He kept running, which would make you look. Yeah, technically Keegan wasn't that smart. You need to go down the 2 of you and stay down.
Yeah, like in the soccer.
He stayed running. Like if an official looked at that, he could have thought this lad's after giving him a dig. Which made it even look worse. Anyway, the CCCC is not taking any action about it. So that's it, over and done with. But we thought we should have covered it on the show. Mikey Sheedy has been talking about David Clifford. He's not the only one. I've read this 1 or 2 places. And Brendan, I'll throw this one to you. It's about, he's saying, you'd nearly be saying now, God help the cornerback who's going to be marking David Clifford in the All-Ireland semi-final. And I was like, that's wishful thinking, obviously, from a Kerry point of view. I can see where he's coming from. David Clifford could come out now and be really angry and, go to town on a cornerback. But then again, if you look at it logically, Brendan, it's not a good place David Clifford's going into an All-Ireland semi-final. He's coming in off a blank score from play, which is very unlike him. And I wouldn't be putting that positive spin on it. I'd be like, Jesus, I hope he gets back and gets a few scores, and that doesn't affect him.
Yeah, I think technically Clifford could play poorly in the semi and still be man of the match in the final. I think we're dealing with a completely different animal here, Willie, around Clifford and his ability. The form's temporary. The class of the man is just on another level. You'd have to hand it the Cork defence as well, and how he was shackled. Does that how much has that to do with the Cork defence? How much has that to do with Clifford maybe not just being on it? Listen, Croke Park's the stage for that, man. I don't think anybody seems to come out angry anymore. Well, we talked to this before about the composure of all the top forwards now. It's frightening. Years ago, it'd say if you kicked a wide or missed a free, you were going to get abuse, you're going to get stick. You could look at the player's body reaction. Usually players kicking wides now, they run out the same way as if they've just scored.
Yeah.
Like they've just completely turned it on his head. So I don't think Clifford would be bothered one bit about that. I mean, in many ways, the fact that Kerry had, 422 without him being on it is a bit scary for the other teams in there. So there's probably a lot of plus points in that. There's only certain players, I think, around the country now. I mean, we're talking about the depth of cornerbacks. Obviously, if there's a couple in Ulster are able to do a job, and people, and there's not that many around the country who are man to man now that kind of sacrifice their game. What they're relying on is everyone dropping in around the house and that. So for Clifford, well, even if I think he was quiet in a semi, I think he still could be man of the match in the final. I just don't think on his day, I don't think he can be stopped if he's in the groove. No,
there's definitely not. And I don't think Clifford will be anyway worried. I think that putting a positive spin on a bad game, I'd rather go into an Ireland semi-final having scored 1-5 than having scored nothing.
Well, look, did they win by 22 points?
Yeah.
So it's probably unusual for someone of Clifford's ability and what we've become accustomed to, his average score per match, whether it's league or championship. But the fact that they won by what they won, and Brendan touched on it, you're bringing other guys into the game. If anything, it probably creates more headaches for opposition teams in actually setting up against them. Clifford probably has a lot of pressure on him, how he deals with it. He seems to manage it quite well. Is he going to be brilliant every game? He's not, but when the pressure comes on, in fairness to him, he's showing up the whole time.
Could defenders be looking at it and go, like, if you're a Tyrone or Monaghan defender ahead and just watch how Sean Meehan marked him. Now, he still could have hit 1-2 off Sean Meehan, even though doing well, because he missed chances. But would you be looking at that going, he's not invincible if you try and wrap him up like Sean did?
Yeah, but like with Clifford, like if I was a defender or a coach and you're asking the guy to do a job on him, like you're looking to probably double up on Clifford as best as you can with someone dropping in front. And if you can win 50-50 against him, that's a good outcome. If you can stop him maybe scoring or creating goals, that's a good outcome. But you probably just have to accept this fella's going to kick 3 to 4 points a game. Yes, the better defenders will look at what Meehan did to try to get in on him. But then Clifford, in his own head, was he as sharp in terms of his shooting? He wasn't. Team still won. He'd be happy with it. Listen to Joe Canning actually during the week when they were talking about him getting the record, and Joe Canning says, I wasn't bothered with it once the team wins. I'll always pass the ball off 9 times out of 10. Clifford for me is one of those fellas, albeit a footballer, that it doesn't matter who gets the scores. But I think on the outside looking in, we're just so used to him creating havoc and scoring that will when he's in the humour,
Yeah, no, there's doubt that. I think that whoever's marking him, I would be worried about him irrespective of how his last game went anyways. He's just going to be, going to be under pressure anyway. So there was two brilliant one brilliant Ulster semi-final, Brendan, and one quite good Ulster final considering the conditions and everything. An exciting game on Tyrone pulled away towards the end. Jim McGuinness isn't happy about this at all. He's really pissed off. This is really annoying him that there's been some good games. This was in the Irish Times. So here's the opening paragraph. The heart has gone out of Gaelic football. This is now, you have to remember, he's basing this off 2 games that were enjoyable, good scoring games, so he wasn't happy about this. The heart has gone out of Gaelic football. Much of last week's games in Ulster were lauded. I feel there's a real danger of what makes the game special and unique is about to be lost. There's a conspicuous lack of physicality, a pronounced absence of aggression, a dearth of turnovers. The game has become sanitised and, in my opinion, soft. What do you think of that, Brendan?
A lot of big words in there from Jim.
Well, again, I suppose his point is he's analysing games to try and come up with some angle on it. Now we're analysing him to come up with some angle on him as well. It's a merry-go-round, isn't it? I think, well, if you're trying to pull it up, you see this all comes in cycles. I mean, 5-6 years ago we were just on about the absolute horror of blanket defence. And, low scoring games. The low scoring games thing is corrected, but the tactics are still in the background, and they're churning and churning. They're going to keep changing. But at the minute, what he's talking about is people aren't going to engage because it's all about playing the percentages. So everyone's dropping back in, trying not to concede frees. That's why there's so much scores from play. The tackling has dropped off. No one is actually going man to man. Just what you spoke about earlier about Clifford. There's so many players around. Clifford doesn't score. Kerry still score like 422, whatever they had. Like that's where the modern game is now. Everybody scored. You remember years ago, there was only a few players. Your free ticker would have had whatever. Someone might have chipped in with a score here and there. You didn't have 9, 10, 11 players involved in the scoreline. So that means that there's this consistent game that's going all over the pitch, which means that people aren't engaging because, number one, I think with the coaching, right, people are so good on the ball. Years ago, you got a guy tight, you had him boxed in, 1-on-1, he's in trouble. Now, no one's getting the ball off him. That's why you don't see the turnovers, because at training, everyone's practicing, keep the ball, keep the ball, keep the ball. So that's the thing. Plus, you don't want to give up fouls. So that's why the aggression, I don't think, is there in the tackle. And you see once possession's turned over, sometimes you look, oh, here we go. It's going to take about a couple of minutes now for an engagement, a proper engagement, either a shot or a through ball. I guess that's the kind of sanitized thing he's talking about, Willie. But it would never scare me that, because we've seen so many changes now over time. I mean, I was just thinking back to even we talk about Tyrone and Monaghan. That's the last time they met was 11 years ago in the Ulster Final. I'm just thinking of the changes like that. That year was the year that Dublin last lost a Leinster match. Remember to Meath. Now you look at the changes that's happened in football in that time. So who knows what the next 11 has in store? But I wouldn't be that worried about it. But I can't see his points.
Yeah, I don't think it's... Is it gone soft? He says in reality, the theme of it is that the defences aren't putting enough pressure on. And I suppose the whole thing is when he was managing, you're talking about having your 6 defenders and you're talking about having maybe 4 zonals across the field. So if the ball goes over there, the defender will mark him and one of the zonals double up and bang, 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 turnover, break down the field. Now, there's no zonal lads anymore because teams attack with everyone. So number one, there's no such thing as doubling up. It's so much harder. Number 2, the players are so good on the ball. They're not giving it to you. They're not, the minute they feel a hand on them, they're shipping it off immediately. And number 3, the 2 games he's talking about last weekend were played in 25-degree heat. Yeah. Like, it's a total bullshit argument based off that weekend. And it shows a bit of a lack of understanding of how the game has evolved since when he was managing. Would that be fair?
No, I think that's very fair. And he does mention, I think, towards the end of the article about... it's a bit of a disclaimer, and Brendan touched on it as well, and yourself, Woody, that the quality, the technical ability of players now is far greater all over the field than it was in 2012 when Donegal did win their All Ireland, and 2011 All Ireland semi final when they put that blanket defence up against us. The game has just evolved so much over the last 10 years that when you do look at the score sheet, you don't have 2 or 3 fellas scoring now. You have anywhere from 5 to 7 fellas scoring. If your corner back coming up, if your wing back coming up, and the scores are coming from all over the field. And when teams are running at strength in numbers, and the athleticism of guys as well, it can be quite difficult to defend. What I would say is, if I was analysing those 2 games last weekend that Jim has based his article on, I would say defensively, all 4 teams were quite poor and porous at times defensively. Tyrone, for me, were probably the best of the 4 teams defensively. That when you have all these numbers back there, and I've mentioned it before, if you're given a man marking job, or you're told to keep a particular eye on player X, that here comes Brendan back, here comes Wooly back, I'm grand here now because the next few bodies there, and you kind of switch off.
What are their men doing though, you see?
What are their men doing?
Their men come up and join that attack, so you can't fully commit to a double up because you're leaving somebody free.
Well, if you look at, I think the 4th goal Monaghan got Darren Hughes when he came through the middle.
That was bad defending.
Yeah, that was bad defending, but Tyrone were set up as they were probably taught on the tactics board and practice during the week, and the 3 fellas, I'm not sure who they were, standing across the middle, and then Hughes made a hard run past it and went after it, but he went through equidistant between two fellas, and no one knew who was going to get him. And then the number 6, he didn't know whether to go with him or stay in his man, and obviously it was a great finish. So the challenge is, when you have so many guys back there, who's marking who. What McGuinness had when he was manager and when they won, I think there was an awful lot of clarity around who was doing what.
Yeah, but you're looking at 12 versus 7.
Yeah,
kind of, because the other team wasn't sending everybody up, and when it did at the start, he was hitting them on the counter because people didn't have a clue how to work through these mass defences. Now it's become so sophisticated in the attack; it's much harder. See, that's my point. In a way, like Brendan, I'd love to see him back managing to see what he'd do with a team, because he's a very, very defence-minded manager. Okay, you'll flip that like Mickey Hart does and say, oh, look at the scores we run up. But it's based on a very defensive structure and hoping for a counter-attack. Counter-attack's pretty much gone now. So, when you look at it, if he watched a game that was 11-all, Brendan, he'd write an article praising the defence, right? But now he watches a high-scoring game,
high quality,
and he doesn't praise the attacking. He criticises defence. He only seems to watch defence and care about defence. And I'm not criticising that. That's what his passion seems to be: is defences and mean defences and get numbers back and stick your chest out and get hands on and be intense. I don't know, for that take to come out of, especially the Monaghan Armagh match, which just blew me away for such a long time since we'd seen such a kind of shootout. Can we not just appreciate that as a good shootout, without... Then again, I suppose you have to give McGuinness credit. When we have the 11-all games, I give out about no attack. So, he's just on the complete opposite scale when it comes to Gaelic football than me.
What will keep us happy? I'm certainly happy. You think about other sports, I suppose, like freaking basketball, it's just up one end, score, back down the other end, score. Are we just going to love the scores that's in it?
Yeah, but we're not at that. Brendan, you need to see more evidence of that than just 2 games. This is a national newspaper.
What I'm waiting to see, you're right, McGuinness is basing it on his time from what he knew there, and you're right, the whole basis of the thing is completely different now, that's what I'm saying. Are we going to get a stage now where someone really goes back to the drawing board in terms of rugged man-to-man defending and actually produces maybe 3 or 4 in their back 6 that really gets about the opposition team? Now, I know they're going up and down the pitch, but players are going to really focus on and hammer the star players in the other team. I'm waiting to see this happening, because at the minute it's taking its waves. But I'm happy enough with the shootout to hit the higher scoring and that. And as you said, players are too cute now on the ball, and the opposition only will get 1 or 2 opportunities to try and pinch that ball. What they're buying waiting on is a poor pass or a shot from a poor area. And that's what it's all come down to. And this is coached relentlessly. So it's led to that bit of standoffishness. But you're right, then, the star player that can drop the shoulder and cut inside, the gaps are there, even with 13, 14, 15. there's still enough gaps. And then, as I say, the forward players there, but well, it's changing. It'll change again.
Yeah,
The-
I think
the-
it'll go on.
Well, no, there's probably three somewhat exceptions, and for me, Dublin, Mayo, and Kerry, but certainly Dublin and Mayo, that they are happy to put up a bit of a press, and they will track their men back, which will lead quite often to having probably 15 fellas behind the ball, but they're not necessarily turning around and sprinting back. They are trying to get a higher press up there, but
Yeah.
The games ebb and flow, but.
Game's changing. It's moving back towards, I think, Brendan, like
Yeah.
Brendan, it's going to move back towards a kicking game and
Yeah.
go back towards get it down there to forwards
Yeah.
and let defenders worry about it, because what's the point in having 13 back? They're going to score anyway. It's too
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
So what are we doing? We're only shooting ourselves in the foot, scoring up the other end. So they'll have to look at themselves in the mirror and go, 10 years ago that made sense. We were getting the turnovers. Teams were tactically stupid. That's not the case now. So us dropping back players is only inviting more of their defenders on. We're still going to be matched off one-on-one inside one half of the field. They're still going to score. And when we get the ball back, we've no fecking forwards to the other end. And we don't have any attacking game plan. And that's what they're going to do. They will figure this out in the next year or two.
Well, see, it is a balance, and the better teams are able to set up based on the opposition they're playing, like, you know, and that, like, for example, I know we're going to come on to the games in a few minutes. Like, if Kildare decide to sit back, just contain them for the first half,
Forget about it.
But you're looking at different options and how to try and set up. And again, the blueprint for beating Dublin for me is there. Mayo have done it. They've just been caught short a couple of times, and Kerry then as well. You got to push up, nearly go man to man, and kind of play it that way. I thought what we seen up in Ulster at the weekend was a bit like basketball with guys retreating back behind the 45, 65. And then, as you said, rightly, teams are happy to commit more players going forward to try to break down that mass defence. In comparison to 10 years ago, I remember 2010, at half-time, Pat Gilroy Saints was
2011, yeah.
2011. Four of us stay back, even though there's only McFadden was up there. Four of you stay back just in case to get us on the counter.
Yeah.
And
Very smart management then, because that was the start. That was the first extreme version of it. And a lot of
Yeah.
teams then the following year got all sucked in and got hit on the counter and they won in All Ireland. Very, very
Yeah.
clever on Gilroy, I thought, that year.
Yeah.
Anyways, lads, we can't keep talking. We've two huge matches to preview, so we'll do that next. Okay, so we'll start with the Ulster Final, because let's be honest, it's going to be much harder to call this one. Little bit of nostalgia here, Brendan, to start off with. These games are not without their controversy. So 2013, Tyrone have a much better record than Monaghan in Croke Park. In Ulster, Monaghan have been all right against them, but 2013, 15 and 18. 13, 15 in quarterfinals, 18 in a semi-final. Tyrone have won all of them. And Monaghan maybe have a little psychological issue getting over Tyrone in Croke Park. But 2013 was the Sean Kavanagh rugby tackle on Conor McManus. 2015 was the Darren Hughes ruffling Tiernan McCann's hair and he dropped down like he had been shot from the stands. And there was 3 lads sent off that day. And the 2018 semi-final had that big drama at the end where Rory Beggan comes running out of the goals and tries to get involved. And, you know, like, I mean, I think we have a fantastic kind of high intensity, heavy running game in store.
Yeah. Listen, Willie, there's two ways of looking at it. Hopefully, we're hoping it'll be a classic, as we're saying, or McGuinness will be writing some article giving off about the death of Ulster football or whatever. But I'm also a wee bit wary of just the league game that they played. You know, like we're looking at Monaghan and their ability, their goals ability, Tyrone, their ability all over the pitch, and the squad that they have. And that league game did end up 14 each and wasn't the best of spectacles and was very cagey. And you're right, the backstory of those Monaghan defeats, McEnany came out after his first tenure there and said, you know, there was a real psychological block with Tyrone. Obviously they did one after it, you know, with the work there, but they you know, the actual monkey got off their back since then. But I'm just wondering, we McEnany back in there, is he thinking, oh no, I presume he would have much preferred to play Donegal in this Ulster Final rather than face Tyrone. But two great stories. I mean, Monaghan, as we said for years there, well, it's 2015 since they were in a final and they won it. And like, as I say, losing the Down and Fermanagh and Cavan twice in the intervening years, you were just wondering, where are they at? They just about clung on to Division 1. And we kept thinking there was going to be a drop. You remember years previous to McEnany, they would break down Division 3 at one stage. But since they've come up, they've been a real footballing powerhouse. Although the last few years in Ulster, it hasn't happened for them. And just looking at their squad the last day, they started without Kieran Hughes, Colin Walsh, Shane Carey, Fintan Kelly, Drew Wiley. Like all these guys are named, on the bench, and they would have been. The turnover now just seems to have happened. All of a sudden, they've got this squad. I don't think they have the capabilities of throwing off the bench in terms of firepower, but I think they have a lot of strength and depth now, and they have the sprinkling of young lads coming in. They're all about pace, and even though that league game was a bit poor, Willie, I think their goal threat is massive because of their nippiness. And you're looking at Croke Park, there should be that bit more pace around the pitch, up more space and pace for those nippy type players. But both teams coming in, I think, with massive confidence. I mean, we've seen Monaghan in the first half, Armagh were unreal. You always expect a comeback from Armagh. The fact that Monaghan, I know Armagh probably gave it away a bit, but they did steady the ship. They showed a lot of maturity to go on and win that match. And I think we can't make too much into Tyrone Donegal with, as you said, the heat you were saying earlier was massive, and obviously the spare man as well. But certainly both teams are coming into this, I think, in their own ways, very confident in terms of not only their 15, but the squad that they have. So it is set up for a cracker.
It is. I'm thinking how Tyrone approached this one. Do they look at Monaghan and say, look what Armagh did to them with a long kick pass? They scored 14 points and a half against them. Or did they look at the defence and go, holy shit, look what Monaghan can do? Tyrone being a traditionally kind of defence-minded county, maybe we're thinking of Mickey Hart and not Fergal Logan, how are they going to approach this? Can we see a situation where Matty Donnelly, McCurry are left inside? I would put Conor McKenna out at the top of the D in front of them and leave my other three forwards, working back and helping. But Conor McKenna is that out ball. That ball that can come out to the 45, and like we saw with Kerry last week with a quick kick pass down to Sean O'Shea, like we saw for the Cork goal, turnover, 2 kick passes, Brian Hurley goal. Tyrone need to have that in their weapon. They won't have it if they don't leave someone on the 45, and who better than Conor McKenna, who's so fast that, you're not going to be able to catch him either side.
Well, I think McKenna came in, Tiernan McCann came in, and Colin McShane all came in off the bench, and just reading up on it, I think they scored 5 points between them. That's something you have to be wary of as a manager, that to finish with your strongest team, that we bring these guys, we hold them back and bring them in for 25, 30 minutes and see what they can do. When
I don't think McShane is ready. McKenna and for me, McKenna and McCann start.
Is he good enough to start? Of course he is, but just based on what worked well, that the semi-final is something that they do and they hold back.
I think he had a niggly injury. McKenna anyways.
Going into it, very good.
Yeah, so I don't know.
But Tyrone's full back line, I actually think that they've 2-3 decent man markers in Hampsey, McKiernan.
Hampsey and McNamee will pick up McCarran and McManus.
And McManus, and they'll probably follow them pretty much everywhere. One of the big factors for me will actually be David Goff as referee. I know David, I've seen him do an awful lot of games. He's very good. He's very quick to call the pulling and the dragging inside, which might leave the Tyrone players under pressure. The 2 black cards against Donegal as well, and that's something that they'll have to improve upon. But there's so many things here to talk about. I think if you step back from even some of the matchups in the game itself, if you look at what Monaghan have done as a county, they're not a massive county. They've one of the smallest populations. Just looking up and the populations coming in, Tyrone have over 3 times the population, right? So for Monaghan to be continually to reinvent themselves and bring in new players, like Brendan has mentioned, I think says an awful lot about them and their love of football. I think, rightly or wrongly, Banty will draw upon the tragic crash and death of the under-20 man captain Brendan Duffig, and somewhere in his pre-match chat he'll have to say to the lads how grateful we are to be in this position, to be going out into the field here.
But that's all he'll say. Right? He won't try to
he's not going to use it as this is we're playing for him, but he will use it to say count yourselves lucky. So if you're feeling the heat out here, count yourselves lucky that you're in a position to be actually on the field, giving it your all, and that might draw a couple of extra percentages for the Monaghan players as the game comes into the latter stages. But for me, Tyrone probably have too much quality. You talk about Mickey Hart and how we set up. I think Dewar and Ogan have, since the Kerry game, acknowledged that, okay, we are trying to play more attacking, kicking football, but it doesn't happen overnight, and you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And we do have to look at what got this Tyrone team to winning 3 All-Irelands, albeit back in the noughties, but had them competing most years more often than not. So again, finding that balance between that is something that they will have to look at. Monaghan have so much attacking options. I think they mixed up really well. I don't think Banty will go away from their versatility in their attack. Like, again, the 4 goals, 2 of them are kicked in, one mistake from the keeper and the other one is ran through the hand. That 4 goal by Darren Hughes. But at the same time, I think Monaghan's pace, and again we've talked about it as well, the pace and the quality. If McKiernan and Hampsey McNamee and Hampsey can do a good job on McCarran and Conor McManus inside, that does take away a lot of what's good about Monaghan. But at the same time, the way Monaghan are running through, attacking the numbers, it's going to be a huge challenge. I think Tyrone will just pip it. I just think they have too much, certainly with their bench coming in. A lot of the guys that are
you're rambling now. I don't know when you're going to stop this answer.
I know, but there's so much in it.
But that's okay. I'll lead you. You don't have to answer everything in the first question. To pick up on that, Brett, I don't know which point to pick up on because he was going for one. But I do accept that kick pass is on inside, and Darren Hughes, different lads looking for the 2 boys inside. But at the end of the day, Brendan, a kick pass is a lot more risky than a hand pass. So that's why a lot of teams don't want to do it. So would they not just let them kick it in? It might go astray. They'll just make sure they're not as naive as Armagh and, have it completely one-on-one. They'll leave somebody maybe in around that D area that if McCarran or McManus can slip past, at least there's not a goal on.
Yeah. Listen, I agree, Shirley. Well, and thanks for leading us. Keep us right on the rambling there. There's always a wee bit of rambling goes on. But do you know what? See, tactically, I think if we look at previous games, how they evolve and change depending on who's playing and what's happening, I think anything we see before that obviously Monaghan are trying to put right, Tyrone are trying to put right in their own side. I think, as you said, if this game was spicy, which we expect it to be, a lot of it could come down to game management around, black cards, sending off. You've seen the brilliance of Began coming out, and Mad Morgan at times they're coming up the pitch as well, and you're thinking, what's happening next, with these guys? So I think how players cope with what's going to happen, because there's no doubt this is going down the wire, because quite simply is any of these teams that get in the elite is automatically going to sit on it and invite the other team on. So it just means that a bit like the four games, even though Donegal were a man down, they were always going to hang in there somewhat. So I think these 2 teams, there's very little between them. I would say BJ are obviously Tyrone's small bit of a bench. I think scoring power from the bench, you would think give them a bit of an excellent. Plus that players who just weren't playing well for years here. You think of Matty Donnelly. He was poor in the first half against Donegal. He caught fire. That's the real Matty Donnelly in the second half. I don't know what was wrong with him this last number of years. Petey Hart seemed to have found a bit of form again. McGeary as well. And Sludden didn't start in any of the league games at all. They bring him in for the championship. He looks rejuvenated. So, Tiernan McCann, you mentioned coming in there. Those are the guys that were the mainstays for Tyrone that just weren't doing it. They weren't playing well. And that's why Donegal had that bit of an Indian sign over him, because those kind of main go-to players weren't doing it. So now those guys are on their game, and then this influx of players you're on about, the Dara Canavan's back in the mix as well. But just the guy you mentioned there, McKenna, I've rarely seen somebody with physical ability. You go back to Clifford, and sometimes that physical side that he has, he can pluck a ball out of the air above a cornerback's head and just push him off and keep the ball with the bar. It looks like he's in a bit of a physical different zone. And McKenna's like that, and the wide open spaces at Croke Park, if he gets on his move, no one can stop him. I mean, he's got this ability, just athletic ability that I've rarely seen in a footballer.
Yeah.
I think if he catches fire, because he can be a bit funny, I've seen him mix the good with the bad, But if he's on his game, and definitely, and I agree with you, Willie, about McShane. Listen, I don't think he's on it yet, but a great guy to come in. And every time he's come in now, he's kicked a few scores. He's cool. He's a ball winner, but he's certainly not anywhere near the Cal McShane that got his All-Star a couple of years ago.
No, I don't think he is. One thing Tyrone have, Ger, and that's obviously from playing Donegal, is they'll play Michael O'Neill and Conor Myler as the two wing forwards, to Mark McAnespie and to Mark Carl O'Connell. They're a huge part of Monaghan's attacking game plan, coming in onto the play and catching up. The first Monaghan goal was McAnespie, and I think it was Jarlath O'Byrne had switched off and he was gone. Myler and Michael O'Neill won't be switching off.
No, and they're two super players. Again, I know Conor well. He was with us in UCD for a time. He did a great job on Ryan McHugh. Donegal the last day. He'd probably go over to Carl
O'Connell, yeah.
So he's Donegal's wing forwards, Tyrone's wing forwards, their job is quite defensively minded. They do link up the play, both guys well. They are options in the slower build-up, the slower attack, but it will take an awful lot of watching to keep an eye on Monaghan's two wing backs. But something Monaghan do as well, Darren Hughes seems to drop back quite a bit to give them some sort of cover, but then he's very comfortable driving on as well. And someone needs to pick him up too,
Here's the thing, when he drops back, so he can test ball in midfield. I've talked to Colin Cavan about this. So this is how Armagh got so much joy with the kick pass.
Yeah.
Because he can't get back there that fast.
Yeah.
Like, he's a big fella, he's to contest the kick out, they lose it. Now he's the head on back. Now I think it's a stupid copycat tactic of Tyrone with Colin Kavanagh. Why can't the centre back do it?
Yeah.
But it just goes to show that if Tyrone are prepared to go back to the more kicking game that they did potentially against Cavan, more so than Donegal, they can get joy there, but will they go for that?
Well, I think the real option would be on the kick out. So if you look at Niall Morgan, his accuracy, and that's something else I forgot to mention on my meandering that Brendan talked about. You have two super keepers there playing as well of similar quality, in fairness.
See, I know you. I can say these things to you. You're not shrinking violet.
No, I don't mind. But no, I was rambling off. But there's so many different facets to this game. But if you on this particular one with the keepers, if anything, if Monaghan have gotten a goal or they're getting a bit of a run, maybe Tyrone slow it down. They let their players get back up the field. Ken Crowe Park is a huge pitch. The weather's supposed to be good on Sunday, and Morgan targets a longer kick out that cuts out maybe 12 players if Monaghan play the high press. And if you get a flick the ball over the head, you're exposing the Monaghan defence straight away. And that's something I think we probably will see the weekend, because he's well able to drill the ball 50, 60 yards, no more than begging as well. So that's another tactic that they could use.
Yeah.
But ideally, the Darren Hughes situation, he should be getting back to 6, and then your 6 gets back to cover the full back.
That's not what happens though, which is a strange one. You'd imagine Tyrone will have planned for that, Brendan, or do you see this? McKenna's back. I think McKenna has to start. He didn't start the last day, I think, because he wasn't fully right. Matty Donnelly playing, now that he's copped on and said, let's go at a lad and not be afraid, instead of standing on the outside and fecking, not engaging. He's a bull. He'll take 2 with him. Can you see that being the front 3? Can you see Tyrone having a game plan to get it in? Or can you see Tyrone just sticking with the running game? And I'm not criticising for the running game, because the running game usually beats Monaghan. I'm sure they'll be talking about a lot of this in their team meetings and out in the field.
Well, and obviously McCurry's like playing the form of his life as well. That's another player, I suppose. Not that he's been in and out of the Tyrone squad. He's walked away a few times, and we've seen the absolute brilliance from him in many ways. A bit like Jack McCarron on the other side. It's never maybe just happened in Championship, and both players are flying this year, particularly McCurry. I mean, he's just lethal, and he's in the kind of form there that you just look at somebody and they just want it. They're going to shoot. The confidence, you can just see it, and he is that type of wee player. He's got that wee, walk and that wee kind of cocky style with him, but he's absolutely on top of his game.
But can you see
if he's isolated 1-on-1, what Tyrone were doing for me, not so much that they were getting the ball inside direct, but they were getting the kick pass up the wings, and they did it to Donegal quite a few times. They sent long balls in that was engaging the full forward line, but maybe as they were coming out to win it, not necessarily when the full forward line were right inside. Donegal probably at that point had players back but they were looking to kick the ball up the wings, and physically, there's a serious bit of pace on their side as well. But listen, Monaghan can match that. I just think physical power, Tyrone probably have that bit extra. But as we keep saying back, the game changes from previous we've seen. Plus, it's Croke Park. So this is the thing, the ability to move the ball in Croke Park is at such a higher level. That's why both defences are going to come under some serious pressure, and who's got the better rear guard? For me, again, it's slightly on the Tyrone side.
Yeah.
And in your question to Brendan, when you said that Tyrone are good at doing the running game and the running game works against Monaghan, that's a question that probably Dewar and Ogan may need to ask themselves, that, right, if we're just horses for courses, we go with this game, we know it's worked against Monaghan in the past, we stick to it and we adapt. And again, we talk about this ability to adapt and evolve within a match. If the kick passes on, you give it. If it's not, you run it through the hands. But running through the hands is a safer option, and it is something that does work. But
Yeah, and it worked against Donegal.
yeah, but I think Monaghan's defence for me wouldn't be as good as the Donegal defence. Albeit Donegal didn't play particularly well, and I know they were down to
Down
14.
a man.
But then actually, if you think of that, Tyrone had 2 black cards, so they were actually even Stevens for probably large parts of it.
Yeah, no, they were late. I think the game was over enough when they got the black card. It's interesting. I think Monaghan are more comfortable in their own skin as a team than Tyrone. I think Tyrone. I think Monaghan against Armagh had a good kicking game. They have an excellent. You've got 12-13 behind the ball. Let's be patient, move it around. O'Hanlon, I think he'll start. He'll inject a bit of pace. Carl O'Connell might come late. McAnespie, I think they're very comfortable in that. I was impressed with their kicking game into the 2 boys inside. I don't know. I think they're lively. I think the Monaghan are coming in a little bit under the radar. I think Tyrone are good at one game plan and not so good at the other. Brendan, I can see the two of you leaning towards Tyrone. I'm slightly leaning the other way.
You were always the rebel, Willie. But listen, and I agree with Willie. I think both are coming in with their own style, and they're very happy with it. I think both camps at training this week will be thinking we're going to win this match. There's no doubt in it. I just think what we're looking at there is just that small bit of extra depth that seems to be in the Tyrone squad in terms of that bit of flair. You look at players, Willie, there, like Paul Donaghy, not even getting a run. I mean, he had 10 points against Donegal.
He's played shite since then, though, Brendan.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, Willie, guys, if he was in Donegal, he's playing in some part of the match. I'm just saying, there's not much in Tyrone in terms of the depth that they have now, because of those players I mentioned previously. Without those playing well, those other guys that are on the bench would have to be playing. I mean, Mark Bradley's another one. Like, Mark Bradley is I've seen him times he's been almost unmarkable. He's not getting a run either. You're just not seeing that in other counties. And I think with those players stepping up now, and it's the freedom again. It's after the Hart there. You see that with loads of teams getting a bounce with a new manager. But not only that, as Hart's voice grew, there's no doubt that he would have been the man, and maybe a lot of other players weren't stepping up. It was his. And of course he had won everything for Tyrone. He was the father of football there. So I think players are I would say with Logan and Dewar, they're probably putting a bit more ownership back on the team. Listen, this is your team. If you're having a huddle at training, you have to kind of raise this. You're calling it. What way we playing these tactics? I would say they've opened all this up to the team, giving them a bit more responsibility. So both teams are coming in with, I think, that wee bit of flair and excitement. And for Monaghan, as to say, well, they've been a disaster in Ulster since 2015. So this is a massive buzz, a massive lift, and of course the sadness that's gone into it as well. So there's so much backstories in this. I certainly think it is the most fascinating pairing we could have had in Ulster. But I still think it's going to come down to some, you're on about referee in there, Jared was mentioning that the pressure that's coming on the ref. The likes of you missing 8 players or 8 officials watching all that's going on, they're going to need that and more, because there's going to be a lot happening here, and how the players deal with decisions for and against. And again, long range kicking is a thing. If this comes down to a 1-point game here and there, you looked at the absolute coolness of McManus. I mean, how many players would have thrown that ball back to Began in terms of, right, this is your thing? I've seen McManus do this quite a few times. I mean, most forwards would have just says, I'll leave that to him, the pressure, and this is your kick. He says no, he steps up and takes it. So I think those are the positives going into them. I think Began if he lands a few of those monster kicks, we've seen him hit them from 55 and 60. That could have a telling part to play in it also.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I don't see too much advantage or disadvantage in midfield. You can see midfield breaking even, Ger. Like, I mean, I disagree with you that Tyrone have a big advantage on the bench, because I think Tiernan McCann and Conor McKenna are going to start. So you're obviously looking at Cottle McShane, who's not 100% right. He only got 10 minutes in the game they had won. You'd imagine if he was right, he'd be getting a little bit more than that. Like, you look at Monaghan, like, I mean, O'Hanlon came on the last day, I'd say he'll start. Conor McCarthy will probably come off the bench. He might get dropped. Then you have Shane Carey, who's a solid player. You have Colin Walsh, who's an excellent defender. Kieran Hughes, who's outstanding. And Fintan Kelly, who's an All-Star nominee. I see that as being definitely balancing anything Tyrone, because I do think Tiernan McCann and Conor McKenna will start, which takes away two of those kind of names.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating. It's definitely hard to call. I as I'm listening to you, Wooly, talk, you're probably
I'm good at making a case for someone.
You're probably bring me over the other side. It's.
But I'm often wrong. I'm nearly always wrong with my prediction. I got both semi-finals wrong.
Yeah. No, that's allowed. Look, it is a fascinating game. I think it's something that everyone is looking forward to seeing. I think the only place that midfield probably matters for me is probably on the kickouts. That, again, both keepers have similar qualities.
They break even too, really.
And they break even. So if teams are playing a high press on opposition kickouts and the ball is being kicked long, then your midfield comes into more play. But in general play, the way that both teams ebb and flow, attack and defend in numbers, that middle part of the field maybe isn't as important other than in the loose,
Yeah.
But,
okay. We'll go with predictions. So, Brendan, who are you going for quickly?
You've convinced me, actually, Willie. I'm going to go with Monaghan.
3 Monaghans. I'll go Tyrone.
Well, I tell you, I'm going to go with a draw. I'm going to go with a draw in normal time with Conor McManus getting an outrageous score to level it off, and Tyrone pulling through in extra time.
Brendan, what are you going for Monaghan?
Yeah, listen, I agree with you. The extra time could be on the cards, all right. Yeah, just goals. If Monaghan get the goal machine going, I just think the nippiness they have inside. They've been scoring a lot of goals, but I just go back to that league game. 14 each, and it was very cagey. So I'm just hoping tactics don't kind of kill the game. We might need a couple of cards to get the spice going, and then who deals with that better. But yeah, listen, I agree with your point. Those players will start, which obviously weakens the bench. But then again, the guys that they're coming in for, obviously, will have a part to play then also. So, listen, yeah, I agree with you. It could come right down to that draw. And listen, again, maybe penalties. What do you think?
Could be a draw. Could be draw. I'm shading towards Monaghan, lads. I think that they play a better kicking game. They play a better. They can get through a 12, 13-man defence better. I think Tyrone are not great at that. I think Tyrone obviously have a better running game, but Monaghan's running game ain't too bloody bad. Like, exactly, I mean, they're at that running game a long time too. I think Monaghan have more strings to their bow. They're more comfortable in their own skin, and I think in an Ulster final, when the pressure comes on, and they have, a little bit of emotion, like you said, Ger, to draw on. When you don't want to make that last run, you might make it. So yeah, I'm shading it towards.
What about the bad record though, Willie, versus Tyrone?
As my father always says, they have to end sometime, Brendan. There's your analysis. Right, we'll come back and talk about the big one, the Leinster final. All right, so the other provincial final is Dublin and Kildare in Croke Park at 4 o'clock on Sunday. Amazingly, Dublin are favourites for the All-Ireland, Ger. Like, I mean, is there anything about this? Kerry obviously hammered Cork, but if Dublin hammer Kildare, they're back favourites for the All-Ireland. Like, Kerry are now favourites. First time they've had to deal with this, like, since start of 2015 championship.
Well,
even start of 2014, they were favourites for all those games.
Yeah, Dublin, obviously, they're not firing on all cylinders. They're not as cohesive, I suppose, as we have come to know them. There's a lot of guys have gone, question marks over one or two others, and a lot of the new fellas coming in trying to integrate with the rear guard that's there. The spine of the team is obviously still quite strong, and trying to integrate them, and again the couple of nuances that develop and evolve and get used to playing with someone. Hard to describe them analytically, but an understanding that happens with players. So with all those changes in the panel of 35 players, and then with a couple of changes on the field, that takes a bit of time for Dublin to click, I guess. But
they kind of clicked against Meath in the first half. It's just we don't expect Dublin to throw away, to look vulnerable at all, especially in Leinster.
No, and look at what Meath did the second half. Again, I wasn't surprised to see that, because Meath, they always have great heart. In fairness to them, but the way they actually, some of their players ran at Dublin and took them on and created goal opportunities. Was Matthew Costello got the goal?
Yeah.
For Meath, that's something which again we've seen at Kerry and we've seen in Mayo do, but we haven't seen none of the teams in Leinster doing it. And for me, probably Daniel Flynn is the only one. And
but on that, like, I mean, is the analysis of that Dublin Meath game that Meath in the second half threw off the shackles and just went after Dublin, like, or did it follow a similar pattern, only Dublin switched off? Like is the message to Kildare, go at them?
I think more got to do with the latter, that Dublin switched off,
right?
Whereas before, Dublin just didn't switch off; they just played the percentages the whole time. Each play was what they focused on, whereas, as can happen within games and obviously at half time, can happen quite often, the team that's dominant for psychological human reasons, they come out the second half thinking that we should be all right here.
Yeah.
Opposition says, right, well, we're fecked if we don't step up and give this a good go, and then the pressure's off the opposition or the team that's slightly behind. But there will be question marks over Dublin still. Are we going to be any the wiser after the weekend, even if they win by 22 points? Probably not. I don't think we will be the wiser until they face up against Mayo.
Yeah. Is there word on Merchant and McDade and these lads? I haven't heard anything. They don't let anything out, but they need those back.
The lads are keeping it quiet, in fairness. So I don't know is the answer. And even again, I said it before, I'd never ask those guys directly. But when you're talking to a few other fellas who are now out of the loop, they haven't heard anything either. So they are keeping things tight-lipped. I think Merchant is a huge player to come back in. I think Robbie McDade, with his experience of playing last year, is a huge player to come back in then as well. But is it the same quality that was there when you compare the likes of Jack McCaffrey or even Kev McMenamin was obviously away with the Irish team? Paul Mannion, the quality of those guys stepping away from the panel, the fellas coming in are usually committed. Are they at the same level? Look,
the answer to that's no. The answer to that's definitely. I mean, the news this week, Brendan, is that Kevin Feely's out and Owen Doyle is out. So as far as I'm concerned, we can rip up any chance that Kildare have without, their probably their best defender and the only midfielder that they have that can, put it up to Brian Fenton, and he's showed it before that he can. Like, I mean, it's just, and Paul Cribben's on a long-term injury, so he was gone as well. And Kildare, I don't know, Kildare still have forwards that can hurt Dublin, there's no doubt about that. I would just love to see Kildare asking questions of the Dublin defence. They have the forwards to do it. Yes, they're going to lose this final, but what way do you want to lose it? I suppose that's the question I would be posing. Well, we wouldn't be saying that to the panel, but that's what the Kildare players need to be saying to each other. That's what's the point? Because when we drop our 12 behind the ball, Dublin are going to get through that, and we won't be able to get the ball to Daniel Flynn, and we won't get him his one-on-ones. Why not just get that balance a little bit better, and let's try and hurt these lads?
Yeah. Well, if there's ever a time now, Willie, and you're right, I don't know if Doyle is just 100% out yet. Feely definitely is, and you're saying Cribben got injured against Meath there. Put them three players in, Willie, it's just such a pity, It just might have created that spectacle. It's a wee bit like what would have been the classic if Murphy hadn't been sent off against Tyrone. What would have happened in that game? Yeah. I just think putting them three players into that there just gives you that wee glimmer of hope. And listen, it's all about Dublin here. Well, I don't know how much better Kildare have got, in terms of catching up to Dublin. It's Dublin that are dropping. I know the last day,
that is it,
McMahon, those lads came in, they kind of give it a wee bit of boost from Wexford. It was Desi kind of saying here, we're a bit flat, they're flat again. I'm just wondering about the fatigue of Dublin and the systems. I mean, you spoke about this way back. I'm not going back into that league semi-final we argued about for ages in terms of how Dublin play. But if the way you're playing is very systematic, and that's what I was kind of getting at too, in terms of the joy of playing football. And when you're the top team, you got to open up and just bury everybody. What I see with Dublin is the way they're in a tactical kind of cover all the time, I think stops maybe the enjoyment of it. Now, you can't say, right, all Ireland's. Sounds mad, boy, but having won so many now, where is the love for Dublin? Surely it has to be in the playing, not necessarily the winning, because the winning's all been done inside out. It's crazy what they've won now. So it has to be the joy of playing football. Now, if you're playing in a system that is everything in terms of what you're doing, that individuality and that brilliance, I think now could be drawn Dublin down. Maybe it's just become too much like work. And that's when you're missing the spark, and that's where sport is different.
But I think
that's
you're,
when
yeah,
we had this conversation.
but I
If you're
think
a team that's
I think you're overdoing that on Dublin. I think you're overblowing that kind of side. For example, against Kildare, you see a much more traditional game. Kildare don't have a huge defensive system. Their defenders don't attack from everywhere. So the Dublin defenders won't be dropping back ahead of the ball because they're trying to watch these lads. I think we'll see Con and Kieran Kilkenny and Costello stand beside their man because they know they'll have their work done on them. Their management team will say, he's not a risk to go. He's not a risk to go. I don't want to see you coming back here. Like, that's my reading of it. I think to a point, I agree with your analysis when they play a Donegal or a Tyrone or a Monaghan, where these lads are just attacking from all areas of the field.
Yeah. It's not that the tactics is the be all and end all. I'm just looking at reasons why. Like, we've all been a bit fatigued by Dublin. Let's be honest about it. Sorry, Chair.
Oh,
and it's not their fault they've got so good. But the domination of the competition now has left things obviously a bit stale, and we keep looking for somebody to put it up them, and we're grasping at straws why Kildare can do it. But the reason we're doing that is because Dublin themselves has dropped. And I'm just looking at the Dublin team and the squad, and how do you still get that championship buzz from them when they just keep winning and winning and winning? I mean, how do you keep that dressing room up there? The players, you're looking at players that's gone away, so surely the players then, the newer players that's coming in, they must still have a certain amount of hunger. But then what I'm going back to, Willie, is if you play in such a tactical situation, then everybody's just doing the job. And at some stage, that's going to pull down the buzz of what's in that dressing room. And I think that's a wee bit what you're seeing. Maybe, I don't know what Jared thinks of that.
Yeah, I think what you're saying
Maybe
is...
I'm rambling.
The Dubs are getting bored. Brennan's saying the Dubs are getting bored winning All Ireland. Let's
forget it.
No,
I
I see exactly where you're coming from. It's like, if you're in maybe the one job for years and years and years, you get a bit bored.
Yeah.
So if the guys who, I think this is what you're saying, Brendan, that for the more established guys who've been there, it's just become a bit boring because they're still doing the same thing. And in order to freshen stuff up, maybe you play a guy in a different position and takes on a different role within the system, or you mix up the system and that actually engages the guy mentally.
But just on that, you continue on. Desi didn't really change the system much. It's almost a carbon copy, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. It's a carbon copy. He has tried to freshen things up by bringing in new players. And some of those introductions have been forced upon him, I suppose, with guys stepping away. But again, if you look at the example of Paul Mannion and the example of Jack McCaffrey, they stepped away. I'm sure they could have managed it if they wanted it, but the bit of fun and the crack was gone out of it. And ultimately, that's what brings us to the game. When you get to the elite level, you obviously want to win and win at all costs. And the crack and the enjoyment that comes from that. But when you're probably so used to playing a particular way, it can become quite boring. And that's something I definitely would have experienced as a player. It's something I would have learned from certainly Mick Whelan with St Vincent's in Dublin and even Pat Gilroy, that you need to add something different.
Yeah.
Now, it takes you a couple of seasons to get used to playing a particular way underneath a new manager, and then maybe a season to maybe perfect it or get close to perfection. But after a while, it gets boring.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
And there's an excitement about a new manager coming in. We might do something different. But in Desi's defence, if he did something different and it didn't win Ireland, like Desi, that's not a criticism of Desi, right?
And I said that publicly last year.
He'd have been absolutely hung.
He was damned if he did or damned if he didn't. Like he's not stupid enough to rip up the script. And probably in the same way that we're seeing Dewar and Fergal Logan, realising that
revert
now as
a bit,
that you can't just rip up the script of something that has worked. So it's a balance between what would you call it? Not that you're there to entertain the players too, but they are amateur players playing at an elite level. So the huge commitment that comes with it on and off the field. But how do you make training exciting? How do you make the game exciting? And playing different game plans is something that you could do, but there's a risk that comes with it because you're taking over a manager who's won 6 All-Irelands in 7 years. So, like, and for me, that, again, I said this last year as well, it says a lot about the quality of character of Desi Farrell, not to be brown-nosing Desi, but for him to take on this somewhat poison chalice, although he's won one now, so that takes the pressure off him.
Yeah.
But trying to do it again this year, playing the same way, I think players are a bit fatigued with it.
Right.
And they are a bit bored with it, just from the outside looking in.
Yeah.
And the new fellas coming in are trying their best, and they're getting better, but they're better in comparison to what was gone before.
Yeah, so it's a combination of other things. So you're onto something there, Brendan. Maybe there is just a little bit of a little bit of fatigue in the same thing. Winning All Ireland.
Yeah, I know, Willie. It sounds so crazy, but you know, it's a bit like anything.
Yeah.
You know, you look at the dream lifestyle, and if you had it for a while, do you get bored of it?
Yeah.
You know, it's.
Are we talking about women here as well, Brendan? We're not talking about the wives. We're not talking about the wives, right? They're great.
That's the example. It doesn't apply to women.
Yeah.
No, but you know, I just think it's a human thing, and that's what I'm saying, Willie, about going back to the tactics and how they play. If Dublin were playing like the team that obviously pre the 2014 game, I don't think necessarily as much fatigue would set in because they were just firing off all cylinders and everybody was playing this mad brand of football. And yeah, I know that had to change, but I just think now is it too entrenched. And you're right, the younger players coming in, the new players, they're just following into a system now, and it's still very jobman. Like everybody does their jobs. It's championship. You want to win the championship, but I just think that what you're saying, trying players in different positions or trying different tactics or letting players go out and play. And I think the fact that Desi did won that first title, I think he's probably feeling this year something has to change. I mean, it might be a defeat. That's somewhat of a clear out and like a new Dublin team with a new style or something. But I just think all those household names that are there, particularly the lads have been there like through all the All-Irelands and particularly the last 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. Like there has to be some level of this is just, you know, you go to Croke Park for All-Ireland final day, I would say they sleep well at night. Do you know what I mean, Willie?
Yeah.
If you were an All-Ireland final day for like these guys, that's what I'm saying. It's just human nature that at some point there has to be a drop-off in terms of that type of buzz for championship, and that's giving everybody else a wee bit of chance.
Yeah, maybe it is. It's definitely an interesting point, and maybe it does go some way to explaining it. Quickly on how do you see Dublin matching off? Because like we said, Kildare's biggest quality is their attack. Daniel Flynn, Davy Byrne's the fastest on the Dublin panel. Is that right? Did I hear that right?
Is that over could be 20 metres, yeah.
Maybe it depends on the distance.
It depends on the distance,
right.
But look, sure, it depends if
he doesn't look the fastest player in the Dublin panel. He'll mark Daniel Flynn, Fitzsimons, Ben McCormack, Johnny Cooper, Jimmy Hyland, and that's probably going to be your. They need someone to mark Neil Flynn. That's what I was asking about Merchant. Yeah. He's playing very well wing forward.
Yeah.
You know, like I mean, it depends who's going to be there, I suppose.
Yeah, Neil Flynn, like he's done particularly well in fairness, and obviously Daniel Flynn too. But look at. I can even see Michael Fitzsimons potentially going on Daniel Flynn too. He'd be well able to do that as well, but it's I don't know. It's hard to generate much content for the matchups in the game itself because there's only going to be one winner. To be honest, Willie.
Yeah. Can you see? Yeah, but okay, we'll agree on that. Can you see Kildare doing a Meath on it and staying within 8 points?
I think now I said this before the league's semi-final. Or was it a promotion game that I fancied Meath? I felt Meath had a bit more in the belly, but I got it wrong. Kildare won that one. So
you said Kildare like to lick themselves after a win.
Exactly, yeah.
Which I thought was a good one.
Yeah. So obviously Dave Jack O'Connor is doing something differently there. Jack O'Connor is only going to play a kicking style of football, which again we associate with Kildare anyway, and obviously Kerry, But I think fitness wise and from an athletic point of view, I think the Kildare guys, I've seen them up close as well, just with a challenge game with Carlow earlier on the season, and I think they're in super shape, the whole lot of them. So I think in terms of the fitness and staying with Dublin for the 70 minutes, they should be well able to stay with them. But it's just the mental fitness when you're conceding a couple of scores and you go behind. How strong are you that way? And that's something that probably Jack O'Connor will be looking to get a bounce from the guys for. And again, it's a pity. I've said it before. There's no back door because the likes of Kildare, I think they deserve a back door to get into a provincial final.
So did they stay within 8?
Just about, I say.
Okay, just about. What do you think, Brendan?
I don't think so. I think we're going to have to see a statement from Dublin. How they're playing, Willie. The last day, like the 6-1 against Meath. You think if Mayo bring anything, Mayo of course lifted a trophy at Croke Park a couple of weeks or just last week there in terms of wee bit of I suppose that thing if it's not a final and if they don't play well, it's set up for Mayo to take them this time. They can't just suddenly play well in the semi-final. So this is the one game. Really, if I was Dessie Farrell, I would do a high press on Kildare. As you said, there's no chance really of them losing the game. So why not go actually after them and look to post a high score and look to get that bit of buzz going. And if they get that bit of buzz back in the team, it can't just happen now in a semi-final. And it would be set up for a defeat. So I think it's a huge how Dublin approach this game and their attitude towards it is massive because they've got to pull themselves out of just that turnover football that they're playing at the minute, which could be a bit of a worry for Kildare. But we certainly hope that Kildare give it a last. And as you said, we Flynn inside. There's always an opportunity for a couple of goals, and that they're going to need them all the way. So maybe a bit of a shootout. But I think Dublin's attitude has to have a bit of spark. Without that, there. I don't think they're going to retain their title this year.
Yeah. Maybe go more heavy metal like Mayo, or the one difference of Jim Gavin era and Dessie Farrell's is the aggressive press is gone.
Yeah.
For me, that's a big difference because Jesus, under Jim Gavin, we analysed it on the show here, Ger. You go, where does a goalie put this?
Yeah.
They have Howard, McCarthy, Fenton and Macaulay posted right across the middle.
Yeah.
They're zonal up everywhere else. Whereas even if you get the short, Dublin actually wanted lads to get the short one, and they wanted to come in on it.
They nailed them then. Yeah.
That's gone.
Yeah,
and that's a negative. Like that was a positive tactic Dublin used.
Yeah, and again, look, we've touched on the fatigue element of it that maybe they are trying to do it, but it's not happening. I think what Brennan is talking about there for Dublin and the attitude that they bring to this game, like if they beat Kildare playing in the same manner that they did against Meath, good half, poorish half, second half, well then that form will carry through to the semi-final and then we're really up against it. But if the guys turn up and there is that spark and cohesiveness there, and they do put on a 15-16 point win,
they're back.
Well then I think they are back. But if they don't, you're still asking the same questions.
Yeah, I think one thing I same as you. I think Dublin are going to win this by in around 8 to 10 points. But one thing Kildare will do is they'll ask questions of Dublin. And if I'm a Kerry player or if I'm a Mayo player, I'll be looking at this game with interest to see how getting that ball in early and getting a couple of one-on-ones and who's playing well in the Dublin defence and how you hurt them. For one county is Kildare that will show the country that and they've usually done that. Right, boys, we're definitely gone over. We're definitely gone over time. We're going to leave it there. We'll be back on Monday and we'll review Bank Holiday Monday. We're going to do a show. We'll be back and we will review the weekend at that stage. So we'll talk to you all then. Good luck.